How do you manage toxic people in your life at work and at home? This is a question I'm often asked, and so I really wanted to do this little video for you to kind of answer three questions. Number one, what exactly is toxic behavior? Number two, why do people do it and choose to have that kind of behavior? Number three, how can you respond? Both at work and at home, how can you respond to toxic people? So let's answer that first question. What exactly is toxic behavior? So that includes lots of different things, but when I think of toxic behavior, I think of things like the person who is critical, they're arrogant, they don't take responsibility, they blame things on you and other people, they won't keep information confidential, they're not great in terms of setting boundaries, they might talk about you behind your back, and it creates this very unsafe, insecure culture. And this has a massive impact, both in work dynamic and also in family dynamics. People feel on edge. They feel like they have to kind of tiptoe around other people. They don't feel safe. They don't feel safe to bring things up. A lot of times people will internalize that and actually not feel good about themselves and kind of start believing those toxic comments. And so chances are you have somebody in your life, maybe several people in your life that kind of fit that criteria. And I want you to understand that this exists everywhere. We all have people in our life, in our different circles, that will be toxic. And so it's really important that we learn how to respond to that. Okay, so let's now talk about the second question, which is why do people choose this type of behavior? And I've done an enormous amount of work in this area, practiced for 25 years, and what I have found is that often people who are toxic, they are either arrogant or insecure. And because of that, it comes out in their behavior. It's almost like misery, you know the quote, misery likes company. It's like, if I'm feeling miserable, I'm going to kind of take you down with me. And so a lot of times toxic people are attracted to other toxic people. It kind of like creates this, that we're attracted to other people who kind of think and feel the same way we do. And so, but at the root of it, these people are often extremely unhappy in their life, and extremely often insecure with who they are. I can think about, listen, I've had lots of toxic people in my life. We all do, okay? This is for all of us. I remember having a boss many years ago who I would have seen her behavior as quite toxic. She was critical. She would not keep information confidential. She would be very, very pessimistic. She would talk about people kind of behind their back, and it created a very unnerving environment for me as an employee. And I remember thinking to myself, I just don't even want to go there. It was such a negative culture. And then I realized that I was allowing her toxic mindset to affect my mindset. And I realized this is nothing to do with me. This is her and where she's at. And this is really important that all of us realize that we can choose, although we cannot control that person who chooses to be toxic, we can choose how we're going to respond to that person. We can choose in terms of how much we actually really allow it to actually affect us. So when people choose behavior that is toxic, this has nothing to do with you. This has nothing to do with me. That is them and their own journey. Okay, so that kind of comes to the third point, which is, how do we respond? Okay, so we're going to have people at work, we're going to have people at home, maybe in our family of origin, that are toxic. So what do we do with that? So one of the core messages that I try to teach in almost every single one of my talks and my books and like everything that I do, it's that you've got to take responsibility for you. You've got to focus on the parts that you can control. We cannot control other people. We can control how we respond to other people. So when we've got toxic people in our life, you can, depending on what that relationship is, your strategy, your solution might look a little different. But one kind of key message I like to say is be friendly but distant. You don't want to be toxic back. You don't want to, they put you down, so you're going to put them down. Don't allow yourself to kind of get sucked into that drama. instead decide ahead of time, okay, when they say this, I'm going to do this instead. And you be friendly, but you be distant. Because you're probably not going to be able to convince them to change them, to have a debate about why they should don't waste your time and energy on it. So you be friendly, hold your ground, have your sense of self-respect, but you can keep your distance when it's possible. When I figured out that little trick for myself in this work environment that I'm referring to, I realized, like, I don't have to play the same game. That's not who I am. I want to be kind and respectful to everybody. And so I realized with this particular boss, and even though there's a power imbalance, doesn't make any difference, that I can choose to be kind to her. I can choose to say, good morning, how are you? And if she's grumpy and she starts being pessimistic, that's not my problem. I can choose how I respond to her. And I realized that the more kind I was, the more friendly I was, I would keep my distance. She started to soften. She started to kind of change her tone. And after a number of months, we ended up having, I think, a really healthy workplace relationship. But it was because I kind of mentally, emotionally kind of set that boundary for myself that I was not going to allow her toxic mindset to affect my mindset. I'm in control of my mindset. She's in control of her mindset. So being friendly and kind of almost having a healthy boundary, being friendly but distant is really a great option, depending on that dynamic. The other thing that you could do, and again, we're going to have to assess which option is better for you. In some situations, it is going to require us to set healthy boundaries and to assert ourselves. And so if somebody is actually putting down to stand up for herself, I find that comment disrespectful, or please stop that, or you can kind of change the language a little bit depending on with what that person is actually saying. But to hold your ground, to have a sense of self-respect, so that you can actually look that person in the eye and they know that they don't have power over you. So learning how to be assertive with toxic people sometimes is extremely important, depending on that dynamic. I can think of very tricky situations I've experienced professionally and personally where I have had to use more assertive communication with toxic people. But if you can, the friendly but distant approach also works really well as well. So you've got kind of two options. And the wonderful thing, and this is the piece I really want you to take home with, is that you are in control of you. You're in control of you. Don't let anybody else, think of yourself as like you're kind of putting yourself a little boundary around yourself. That other people are out here, but you can control how much you absorb from that, or whether you're going to kind of put a healthy boundary, hold your ground, have self-respect, and most importantly, surround yourself with healthy people that are going to lift you, that are going to inspire you, that might hold you accountable, that might actually challenge you, that's okay, but really want the best for you. And that's a really important practical tip, I think, for all of us.